It's the Weekly Wrap with your host, broadcasting legend Bruce Wolf, and his trusty sidekick, comedian Tim Slagle. And now, without further ado, Bruce Wolf.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. Hey, Tim, nothing much happened in the last week, right? Gee whiz.
Well, I haven't been rated, so I'm in a good mood.
Yeah, you're a good guy. You know, I saw it took them 10 hours to do this raid. And I know that they wanted to come away with a cocktail napkin that was unlawfully taken from the White House. How long does it take to try on all of Melania's dresses? It's got to take at most 90 minutes.
I think they were looking for one that was in Merrick Garland's size. That's what I think.
Somebody, one of these right-wing hosts that I don't normally like, actually had a funny line and called it Operation Cross-Dresser Hurricane. So, yeah. And I have heard you talking. The theory is that that Trump's got files. He's got that.
Well, there's two theories. Number one is that he has the Crossfire Hurricane file, and the FBI wants that back because it's very dangerous to the FBI. The other theory is that he doesn't have the Crossfire Hurricane file, but he's been telling them that he does.
Oh,
knowing they would do this.
So it's 8-dimensional. I don't know whose side is playing the 8-dimensional chess, because that's that's what Trump is always giving credit for. I mean, I always take the Occam's razor approach that everybody's just an idiot and it's bureaucratic bungling and nobody actually thinks anything through. But yeah, the other side is supposedly playing that too. They're using the Nimzo Indian defense. It's a chess game.
Well, I did find it curious that there was nothing in the safe. That indicated to me that it might have that the setup that kind of put one more gram on the setup side of the scales.
Okay, that's one side, but the other side is that they are deliberately doing this, of course, in order to get Republicans galvanized and behind Trump, who's the only guy that Biden can beat. So that's I don't think. What I do know is this. I mean, the guys like Neil Steinberg, the Sun-Times columnist, were tweeting jokes about this, and his joke. Do we have that up here or no? Well, it was just it was good to see the Republicans all of a sudden concerned over the possibility of law enforcement framing a person of color. The bad news: that color is orange. That's. When the liberals are desperate because they're resorting to the irony and pity when you're feeling not so good, because it doesn't make any sense. This whole thing doesn't make any sense. Now, Andy McCarthy, who I always trust because he was on top of the Russia thing the whole time, saying that there was no there. He says that it's all a pretext for them to find stuff for the January 6th investigation. And that you can do that. You can get a warrant for a legitimate purpose, which would be to find, to get these documents. However, de minimis or minuscule the whole operation is. I mean, it's something that should have been negotiated. It's a records request. It's a violation. That Hillary's emails are much worse than this, and nothing was done about that. But on that pretext, you can then find stuff about January 6th, and that's what
or his taxes.
Right. So I just don't. Well, why did they just sick all new 87,000 IRS agents on him? There would be a greater likelihood that they would find something than that. And it just seems like it's an innocent construction of what's going on here. Garland admitted today that he's the one who ordered this, and the whole thing is about just getting these records. There was a Newsweek story that said they didn't think it would. With Trump out of town, that it would cause all the stir that it did. Well, I mean, they were totally wrong about that. And I mean, what do they think they're doing when they're raiding a former president's residence? It was really one of the. It's just an amazing political blunder.
Well, it was. Nobody knew about it till Trump sent out that letter. I mean, that was the moment. They operated in secrecy until about 6 o'clock Eastern.
So he's the one. Well, he knows it. Good publicity when he sees it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's when the crowd started gathering outside of Mar-a-Lago with the flags, and that's when the FBI had to arm up.
what are they doing here for 10 hours? And, Kevin Williamson in National Review wrote that, well, Trump is just an ordinary citizen. We shouldn't treat him like he's special. Yeah, he is an ordinary citizen, and ordinary citizens don't like to be rated like that. And that's why they're going to relate to what has happened to Trump. I mean, that's been his MO that this whole time, is that, he's the billionaire who's Joe Sixpack. And I don't, and I mean, it's just,
well, the
really
interesting thing about ordinary citizen, when Trump called up the new president of Ukraine to talk about information on Biden was an ordinary citizen at that point.
Exactly.
But somehow that kind of devolved into a sleazy campaign tactic.
Right.
Cool, because Biden might run for president and he might get the nomination. Well, this is the same thing.
Yeah. No,
there's just as much might here.
Yeah, I think the best tweet I've seen on this, though, so far was from our esteemed former governor, Rod Blagojevich. He had to weigh in on this. And Blago was, of course, relating it to his own experience, where he was victimized by a raid. And I'm no political expert, but with friends like Rod Blagojevich, who says the FBI raiding the home of President Trump, haven't been this shocked since the FBI came to my home at 6 a.m. to arrest me. Targeting political leaders by a weaponized and politicized DOJ is a criminal attack on our democracy, a tragic day for all Americans. Yes, Rod, but we don't need you as a friend of the court right here. You're not the best example. Although, I got to say, why didn't they take Jesse Jackson Jr. down at the same time? They had the goods on him, too. But there's a Trafalgar poll out. And Trafalgar is the pollster who's the closest to being right in the presidential election. I mean, your 538 guys, he just reads other polls, and all the other polls were totally off about the election. But Trafalgar realized that Republicans don't answer telephones, and that it was going to be a lot closer than it was. Anyway, a poll right now shows 70.4% of Americans say the Trump FBI raid has increased their motivation to vote in 2022. And 76.7% of the GOP, 53.9% of independents say Trump's political enemies are behind the raid, as opposed to an impartial justice system. So, it looks like, a week ago we were talking about how bad a candidate Herschel Walker is, and some of these Trump candidates are going to help the Republicans commit suicide in the midterms. And now it's almost like, nope, it's a whole new ball game. I don't know what else is. It's like the October surprise just happened in August. And it's not good for the Democrats. It's just kind of crazy. I'm willing to entertain any conspiracy theory on this one. It would make more sense than what actually happened. I listened to John Podhoretz's podcast, commentary podcast, and he was wowed. He's no Trumper. He didn't vote for Trump, but there's apparently an ad on Trump's website, and it's a very calm Trump in a 3-minute ad. And Podhoretz says that if Trump can go back to his apprentice demeanor, I don't know, did you ever watch The Apprentice? Did you ever watch him in that?
No.
Yeah, I didn't much either, but apparently he was, he would just sit back and he would be fatherly, whatever, and help these, would-be billionaires. Not at all like he is in a campaign rally. So if he would take that approach now, he could turn this Democratic overreach on the raid against them. And another thing is that this time when he's running as a guy who actually was the president. And before he was the president, it reminded me a little bit of when Reagan ran the first time. Well, him with the nuclear football. I mean, he's going to get us into a nuclear war. But of course, Trump didn't do that. Now he should have kept the rioters at least 100 yards from Pence, or at least been upset about it. But given the fact that Biden is talking about zero inflation, I'm thinking that Trump's theme song shouldn't be. Well, he has that Stones theme. You can't always get what you want. Yeah. I think he should turn it into the old Democratic theme. Happy days are here again, because because that was FDR's, as Podhoretz reminded us. But they've given him new life. You know,
Yeah. Now he's a victim. Now he's and that's like the best thing you can be in the eyes of a Democrat. He's a
totally.
victim of a victim of police.
Right, exactly. Only this time the color is orange, as Neil Steinberg said. The best thing about this race, you know, it gives Trump a different axe to grind. He doesn't need to steal anymore. He can talk about this.
Well, you know, it also gives Republicans running for Congress. It gives them something too. It's they can show footage of the raid and say, why did these people want 87,000 more IRS agents? If we're elected to Congress, if you give the Republicans the House, we promise we will defund those police.
So meanwhile, this was Scott Perry. Is he the congressman whose phone was confiscated by the FBI? So maybe there's more to it than that. You know, I don't know what's on his personal phone. If somebody found your personal phone, Tim, what would be the most embarrassing thing? Would there be anything indictable?
Nothing indictable. Sure as heck a lot embarrassing.
Yeah, but for me, it's the most embarrassing thing is that on the New York Times spelling bee, I missed Queen Bee getting all the answers right by one word, vivid, just the day before yesterday. And I mean, it's so shameful. You know, I should be censured by the United States Congress.
You should be censured vividly.
Easily. And I've missed that word before. Anyway, all right, enough about this for the moment. I'm sure we'll come back to it. Bruce Wolf and Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who was a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him.
Al Gore said you stole an election.
No man wouldn't lie to his supporters. He lost his election and he lost big. I know it, he knows it, and deep down, I think most Republicans know it. Lynn and I are so proud of Liz for standing up for the truth, doing what's right.
Oh, God.
Their oath to the Constitution.
Be nice to Liz or I'll shoot you in the face.
Prepared to do so. Liz is fearless. She never backs down from
I wish he'd worn that Stetson on Meet the Press every week. That would have been fun.
Yeah. Donald Trump is never again.
Look at that. He voted.
And
were the Wyoming primaries already?
Proudly voted for my daughter. I hope you will too.
I'm Liz Cheney, and I approve this message.
Yeah. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. Look, you know, I voted for Trump twice. I don't like him a lot. Dick Cheney, I voted for a couple of times as well.
This will speak to its court filings and its work.
Are we still listening to this guy? But you know, somebody tweeted that Cheney begged Trump to pardon Scooter Libby because Bush was too much of a coward to do it, and Trump pardoned him. And this is how Cheney repays him. And this person says, never Trumpers are worse than Democrats. I mean, there's a point to that, you know, because Scooter Libby did nothing wrong. He was railroaded. Great piece by Arthur Herman in commentary years ago about this, about how this, you know, is a whole setup job by, you know, our favorite prosecutor who put Rod Blagojevich away. And, you know, they basically hamstrung us in Iraq over this whole deal. And it was garbage through and through. But,
you know, it was so long ago. I can't even remember what Scooter Libby did.
He didn't do anything really. I mean,
no, what was he accused of though?
Remember, it was supposedly somebody outed Valerie Plame. First
that's
off,
right.
It would have been okay.
Right.
It would have been okay to out her. Secondly, Scooter Libby didn't really lie about it. And there's this Judith Miller, it's so complicated. This Judith Miller of the New York Times even admitted later that her notes were kind of screwed up. And that's what wound up hanging Scooter Libby. And it was just total garbage.
Lying to the FBI in an investigation for something he didn't do.
Well, the prosecutor, Fitzgerald, knew ahead of time, you know, who the leaker was. It was this guy, Richard Armitage, the first Undersecretary of State or Assistant Secretary of State. I mean, it's so many years ago, I'm surprised that I remember half these names. But it was absolutely garbage upon garbage upon garbage, and Bush wouldn't do it. He wouldn't pardon him. Trump has to do that. Trump's the guy who moves the embassy to Jerusalem. Trump's the guy who actually does some things. He's not a great guy, but Dick Cheney ought to shut his yap. That's what I understand he's defending Liz, but he should stay out of it.
Well, he probably has to put up with her coming home crying. They're making fun of me.
So my phone is ringing. That's great.
Oh, good. That's a nice. Gives it a homey feel to the show.
It was Dick Cheney calling. He says, I'm gonna take my hat off like Odd Job and just decapitate you with it.
Yeah, okay, I got my holster strapped on here. You ready to draw, partner?
Go ahead, big man. So speaking of Trump, apparently, and this was all before the Mar-a-Lago deal, which negates practically everything before it, including January 6th. Trump was enamored of Hitler's generals. There's apparently some recollections of conversations in which he wishes that his generals were. Trump asked an aide why his generals couldn't be like Hitler's. Now, Hitler's generals were a bunch of losers. I mean, they lost the war. But again, I mean, the Hitler who moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, if that's Hitler, then peeing your pants is cool. And I'm Miles Davis, pardon my Billy Madison. I mean, gee whiz. Let's get real about that. So, Tim, and you could vote for cloture on this, even as I bring it up, because this is such inside baseball. I don't think anybody's really all that much interested in it. But John Kass it feels that he's being attacked by his former employer, the Tribune. And, if you're not paranoid, you're crazy. I mean, there is a certain amount of truth to that. They have gotten, they've gone after him to a certain extent, and in large part because he's conservative. But I think he's bitten off a little bit more than he should have chewed. He got really upset that this guy, Bob Goldsboro, who has been writing for the Tribune for decades, what this guy does is he gets looks at real estate listings and finds out where
famous people moved.
Yeah. And he writes the amounts, and it's really very embarrassing. And it's like a gaper's block on the expressway, and you really shouldn't read it. You're vermin for reading it, and I am vermin, and you're also vermin. This guy is vermin for writing it as well. I have myself had at least 2 occasions in which he's written about me, and one time, and he always does the obligatory repertorial thing. He'll call you up for a comment. Well, I called him back, and he said, "Oh, I don't know what to do," because this was like the first time anybody have ever called him back. Nobody ever calls me.
So he disclosed what you paid for your house when you moved?
Oh, a couple of times.
What you sold the last one? Wow.
A couple of times in the distant past, when I was a mini celebrity. Sure. And now he wouldn't care. But so one time, I kind of called his bluff, the way that Trump called the FBI's bluff, I guess. I told him that where I was moving, I was going to have to mow my own lawn because I could no longer afford a Mexican. So he said, "Well, I'll put that in, but I'm going to leave the Mexican part off." So imagine this vermin who writes about this stuff still has to be politically correct. Okay, I get what's kosher and what isn't kosher, but anyway.
How much did he pay for his house? Does he disclose that? I mean,
how much did who pay?
But was it Bob? Is that his name?
Well, who cares about Bob Goldsboro? I mean,
it seems to me, if that's how you make your bones. Oh no, that you should full disclosure.
No, what I would do is I would say, well, why don't you find out what Rex Hupke paid for his a current Tribune columnist? Why don't you report on his various home sales? And I don't know that he's ever done that. I doubt that he has done that, reported on anybody at the Tribune. But he's always been the Tribune's dirty little secret. And they know that people like to read this stuff, and because people enjoy the misery of others, and they want to see how much other people earn and how much their houses have gone for, especially if they're downsizing. And
yeah, so he focuses more on downsizing than upsizing.
No. He wants to show how the people are making it good as well. So I just think that John, even though he's, I'm sure, partially correct about this, that the Tribune's after him. I mean, Goldsboro, he's an equal opportunity destroyer, pretty much, although he doesn't go after Tribune people too much. Anyway, enough about that. Thanks for letting me talk about that. Meantime, Jimmy Pethokoukis, friend of ours, had a tweet. He's at the American Enterprise Institute, and when Biden says that there's 0% inflation, and that he, of course, that's ridiculous. But the problem is that they passed this Inflation Reduction Act, and inflation may stop accelerating. One is there's no causal nexus between the two, obviously. I mean, a climate change bill has nothing to do with inflation. But
they'll get that passed just in time for fall. And
yeah, right. I mean, the thing is that but Pethokoukis thought that people were going to give Biden credit for the passage of this bill, in part because it's labeled as inflation reduction, and if inflation did slow down, that the Democrats would get credit for it. However, I am here to tell you that there was I believe a U.gov poll, and I think it said that most of the people just don't buy that at all. Especially, yes. Do you think that the $369 billion climate and energy bill will increase or decrease inflation? Increase 42%, decrease 13%, increase, decrease by party. The Democrats thought, but they weren't even that much in favor of it. They thought it only a few of them thought it would decrease inflation. The Republicans, 72% thought it would increase inflation, 2% thought it would decrease. And independents also were lopsided against Biden on this one. So far, Jimmy, I think you're a little bit off on this. And I hope you were a little too clever on this one. Do we have time to show Joe Biden putting his jacket on, which was kind of very comical? Did you see this?
Oh, yeah. It was
a real hard time. He was getting off Air Force One, and he had to have Jill help him put the jacket on. Look, I know I've always had a problem putting jackets on. Since I was a little kid, used to put them on. Remember when you put your snowsuit on backwards? So I totally understand that.
I put my arms in the legs.
Yeah, I don't know if that's more embarrassing than Biden when he had shaken Chuck Schumer's hand, and then he went to shake it again.
He forgot
that he had shaken his hand, and hey,
but he just forgot what he was doing there for a second.
Hey, I'm just a few brain cells lost behind you, Mr. President, but I'm not the president. All right, coming up, more tomfoolery on the Weekly Wrap.
I am deeply contemplating taking a busload of New Yorkers to go to Texas and do some good old-fashioned door knocking because we have to, for the good of America, we have to get him out of office.
What's the matter, Mayor Adams? Whatever happened to give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses? I mean, this was the greatest gambit that anybody's ever come up with. What Abbott did. Who else engaged in this? Sent illegals up to New York and Washington.
Ducey in Arizona.
Yeah, right. So, why would they send it back? It reminds me a little bit. You remember when the Reverend James Meeks, South Side guy, decided he was going to bus everybody, all the students, up to New Trier, and since New Trier has that annual hair shirt day, white privilege guilt day, where they have seminars and things like that. Well, why not take in some of the students?
Sure.
Why not, let them
or trade places? I mean, that was
Sure.
that was a big deal in the 70s, wasn't it?
Forced
busload
busing.
up, busload down.
I remember it was Judge Garrity. I think it was W. Arthur Garrity, if I'm not mistaken. They tried forced busing in Boston. other places as well, and it didn't work. There's nothing racist about living in your own neighborhood, and it was an experiment that failed.
Well, at the time, there kind of was.
What there was what?
Well, your own neighborhood, but back in the old days, your own neighborhood, the people tended to look like you.
Well, right. I mean,
and that's always kind of happened to Chicago. I mean, it's what makes Chicago
is
makes
like
it delightful. You can
Chicago's
travel around the world in a cab.
Yeah, right. But I mean, Chicago's, what is it, like the third or fourth most segregated city in the United States? So
yeah. That's because Old Man Daley had some pull.
I don't know. It's still we haven't had Mayor Daley Sr. around in a long time, and I don't think his son was quite the man that his father was. In any event, I love them having to deal with their own hypocrisy here. I think
the problem they have, personally, is that they thought it was a real good idea to flood the country with, especially the red states, with immigrants when all the immigrants were coming from Mexico. But now there's a problem because they got immigrants coming in from Cuba and Venezuela, and they don't vote Democrat. So basically, they're busing Republican voters. They're actually reversing what the Democrats tried to do to the red states. They're reversing it to the blue states.
Well, and you've seen the increase. I mean, Trump, for all of his alleged racism, actually made some improvements among the Hispanics. And a bellwether congressional seat is this one. Is it in El Paso? I think it is, where there's a Hispanic running, and she's conservative, because that's the American dream. You hop aboard, and you don't really want the welfare state. Yeah, you don't want to be subsidizing it. You want to you live your own life, and but
I can't remember her name.
Condescending liberals don't want to have it that way.
I can't remember the congresswoman's name that you're talking about, but she's cute. She's like she's like an AOC that didn't pass economics by staying after with the professor.
Well, and that's why you're on this show, Tim, because
I'm here for the tasteless remark.
Right, and we need more of it. So Jonathan Turley, who is an erstwhile Democrat, I believe, but he's pointed this out. Talk about bellwethers. Brian Stelter of CNN is now, after previously calling the story manufactured and whataboutism, Stelter is now literally asking, what about his son, i.e. Biden's son, Hunter? For those skeptical of the sudden media-wide conversion, it sounded more like what to do with his father. And certainly that's where it's headed. It's just one more nail in the coffin of Joe Biden. It's amazing how they'll pile on. And remember, that was the story that responsible media couldn't run in October of election year about Hunter Biden.
Well, yeah, because it was Russian disinformation, and they had 53 intelligence experts to attest to it.
Sure, who had not examined any of the evidence. It just seems to me that would be a good Russian disinformation. So, so Stelter apparently he's conveniently learned his lesson about this. But what about Rachel Maddow? I read, and I don't read these stories very carefully, of course, as you well know. I just read tweets and and infer and intuit the rest of it, because that's all I'm being paid for. But the Twitchy team said it was one hell of a self-own. Rachel Maddow compared her Steele dossier coverage to Dan Rather and the George W. Bush debacle, and yikes!
Wow.
So did she really own up to this? Because if she didn't learn her own lesson, because just the other day she was talking about, you've got to get the old-fashioned print version of the newspaper tomorrow about Donald Trump. So she remembers the Gutenberg press, but not her own naivete. I mean, she just fessed up to her Red Scare on Russia, but it was like she'd forgotten it all and said, "Oh no, now we're going to believe all this new stuff about Trump." So she was
one of the worst. I mean, she was after Trump like Geraldo into Al Capone's vault.
Right. And what did we find in Trump's vault yesterday? not Geraldo, nothing so far anyway. I kind of wish they do find a smoking gun in this because I'd like Laura Ingraham to have her trap shut as well, but I don't think we're going to find it. It doesn't seem like, no, as a matter of fact, I mean, it's Garland is admitting that they're just looking for, unless he's lying about this, they're just looking for those documents and they needed a raid for this. So turning our attention to the monkeypox scare, highly relevant. My old partner.
You're not afraid of monkeypox, Bruce?
Well, I guess I should be. I remember when the AIDS scare happened, it was like, everybody can get it. Everybody can get it. And then it was like, well, not exactly. But we'll say that everybody can get it. My old partner, Dan Prof, tweeted something about apparently the Binnies on Jefferson in the South Loop is allowing only one person in their humidor at a time because ellipses.
Is that code?
Monkeypox.
One person in the humidor? Is that code?
Well, I
one cigar in the humidor at a time.
That inspired me to quote Groucho. I don't know if it's apocryphal, but Groucho purportedly said, I love my cigar too, but I take it out of my mouth every once in a while. So yeah, I'm a little, and then you have like Channel 9's very safe, politically correct news, which tries to hold itself out as irreverent, couldn't bring itself to say that monkeypox is spread by gay men. And they're like everybody else. They say it's men who have sex with men, but they will not say that that's gay men. And this reminds
me, not necessarily. It could be gay women.
It reminds me of the old Onion story, which let me paraphrase it here. Remember that old Onion story, a first-person account? The guy said, "Why do homosexuals keep having oral sex with me?"
Yes.
It's but correct me if I'm wrong. I really haven't been following this right. I mean, can't gay lesbians actually? No, it's gay men. It's gay men having sex with men having sex with men.
Here's the thing.
That's
there's another.
monkeypox.
Well, there's
it depends if it's a gay, if it's a woman who identifies as a man.
That's what I meant when yeah. But here's the reason. Here's the other reason why I believe it's so prevalent in the community, is that a lot of men who have sex with men have immunodeficiency. It's because they've been exposed to HIV and they have to have they actually have to take
and
medication.
Then you have this health commissioner or spokes being saying, it really wouldn't be a good idea to be having sex with a lot of partners right now. So
well, that's the thing they never want to say. It's basically promiscuous sex with strangers. That's basically it, but they won't say that because
is it a slur to call it monkeypox because you think of monkeys doing that kind of thing? So that would be kind of a slur. I think they should change the name of that. Meantime, our old friend Malcolm Gladwell, he's got to weigh in, and he's weighing in on the fact that people working out of their home is really going to cause a terrible societal shift. And he says, what have you reduced your life to? Now, I didn't actually read the story because I'm kind of biased against Malcolm Gladwell because he's the same dude who tried to reductio ad absurdum the miracle of David slaying Goliath into some sort of disease that Goliath had that made him vulnerable. If you really checked it, so it wasn't God that was on David's side. Now you don't have to believe in any of that. There are no miracles. Everything can be explained away. And so, I mean, that's what, there's some things I like about Malcolm Gladwell. I like that he discovered that successful NHL hockey players are all born in January, for example, because of the way that they were brought up through the system. It's there are some truths there, but I mean, gee whiz, I need him to tell me that the pandemic, that people working remotely is going to cause some societal problems. Okay, granted. It also helps us keep away from each other too, which is not a bad thing. So I'm sure it's a mixed bag. Your views, Mr. Slagle?
I can't stand it. I'm a comedian. I work in the club.
Oh, right.
I could not stand the Zoom shows. I tried a couple and it just did not feel. It's not comedy. It's like trying to play a symphony on a Casio. It just doesn't.
Okay. All right. Well, there's one from Malcolm Gladwell. Bruce Wolf and Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
Can do the honors. Do you want to play or do you want to pass?
The password is disco.
Playing or passing?
Playing.
He's playing. Okay. He's playing. Okay. If you get this, you've tied the game.
Dance. Dance. Disco.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. Password. Did you watch that show when you were a kid, Tim?
I did. I actually enjoyed it. That's where Alan Ludden met Betty White, and they
did they meet on that show? I know that she used to be a guest panelist on it, but I didn't realize they met there.
Yeah, that was a lot of shows. Seem to have the same password format. I mean, I don't know if you ever play catchphrase with your
sure.
Your family.
Love
that's that's like password, but I mean it's not just one word.
Right.
Right. And then the $10,000 pyramid is another ripoff of password, but it's the same thing. It's not that one word. I mean, that makes it a lot tougher and a lot more like watching cricket. Just
but I used to watch game shows all day long, especially when I faked being sick and stayed home from school. There was a show called You Don't Say. That was with a guy named Tom Kennedy, and he was Jack Nars's brother from Seven Keys. So I was wondering if his real name was Tom Nars and he just went after the Kennedy mystique. That's how into it I was in the game shows. There was a Say When with Art James. My favorite was Concentration. Do you remember Concentration? With
yes, that was the memory game.
Right, and they would have like rebuses or rebuy behind these puzzle parts. And Hugh Downs, I'd want them to bring back Concentration with a hologram of Hugh Downs saying the board goes back and it's still your turn. And one of the greatest moments of my life, my sister and I used to watch it, and it would say forfeit one gift, but it looked like an I there, so we thought it was forfeit I gift. But we were little kids. One time, there were 30 squares on the board. They revealed only 2 squares, and I guessed the Great Wall of China, and I was right about it. But it was like I did it in a vacuum because I was home alone, faking being sick from school. And it's like, well, it's like when you get a hole in one and you're the only golfer there. It's like it doesn't count. So I want to take credit for that, like 60 years later.
Sure. I actually think that they should update Password. They should make it more a 2022 version. What you could do is you get 2 senior citizens and their computers and see who can log in first.
Yeah, there we go. Right. I thought you were going to say that they would use, the more modern lingo, like I saw in the clip they had there. Martin Short was trying to guess the word twerk, which. But no, I like it. I like it better. I like your idea better. Just let everybody log in.
Of course, that one would probably have to be on cable because of the amount of swearing that it would involve.
Right, and then and they'd have to edit it a lot because you'd have to fast forward about 20 minutes later after the seniors had logged in. But so, are you up to date on Better Call Saul?
No, I forgot to say that before.
Okay, I won't tell you about it. I will tell you that they did even have a post.
I don't know. Why don't I just?
I'm not gonna give away anything that happened in the episode. There's no. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, but you're going to talk about scenes or something, right?
No. I'm not even going to talk about. I'm going to mention one little thing that is fine. You'd see it in a tease.
Okay. Well, hang on.
No, stay. No, don't go away. Well, I was just going to say they had this post-game show for Better Call Saul, and I mean, it was really sweet seeing the actors, and it wasn't all that illuminating. It's because all you ever see when these actors talk about the show is they're gushing about how wonderful an experience it was. Okay, and certainly Miracle Whip is awful. I agree with them on that. But I would have liked to ask. Okay, you're not listening, right? Okay, Ray Seahorn, how she did that crying scene. What does she think of when she's doing that? Does she think like this is my last paycheck as an actress? I don't know. So anyway, you could put the headphones back on. We're done with Saul. Okay.
All right.
All right. And
I forgot that I had to watch that before the show.
Then you don't have to. So although next week is the last episode. So I did tune in Gutfeld when all this Mar-a-Lago stuff was happening, because I want to see, how funny he would be. And I'm happy to say that he wasn't really funny that night.
Yeah, that's a sign of a
comedian
true. That's a sign of a true professional.
Tim, you're the comedian who cheers for the other comedians. I mean, you're really good.
No, I'm not. I'm Mr. Schadenfreude.
Right. Okay. So, but he was a little funny, but his slash line wasn't too good. His on base percentage wasn't all that hot. And this Tyrus guy, who can be quite funny, he talked about that this was going to spur everyone to elect Trump as a spite president, which is funny. But didn't Larry David do a whole season on a spite store? So I think it's a knockoff idea. It's a variation and a theme. I'll give him that. But I was kind of happy that they weren't all that funny.
I didn't see the Spite Store episode. What was the
Larry David? A whole season of Curb Your Enthusiasm was about that. He built this coffee shop next to a coffee shop to spite the original owner, because the original owner had, he went through the draconian lengths to show him up.
There's actually I'm watching The Anarchist on HBO. Are you familiar with that?
I know the name and I've heard that it's good, but tell me about it.
It's a show about Acapulco, where a bunch of people who decided they were done with the government, they wanted to live in a place where there was no government, all moved to Acapulco.
Oh, okay.
And it's a documentary on how that idea went.
Okay, all right.
And
is that like everybody, including Alec Baldwin, who moved to Canada after Trump was elected in 2016? And it never happened.
I'm still waiting for that. I want to set up a GoFundMe page to buy one-way tickets for all these people that say they're gonna leave the country, to make sure that they go.
I was so gleeful the night that Trump won, and I had to look at the Twitter accounts of some of my Democratic friends, and one of them, a former colleague of mine in television, was tweeting, and it was desperation. It was tweeting that they had seen that applications had already gone up for visas or whatever to move out of the country. And of course, something that never materialized, and you just had to live with it. And you may have to live with it again, with a Grover Cleveland like break in the middle for who was that? Benjamin Harrison, I guess. That'll be Biden's claim to fame.
Well, a lot of celebrities say want to revoke their citizenship over the Dobbs decision in the Supreme Court.
Oh, of course, yeah.
They say we're going to go to another country where it's more tolerant. But the law that was struck down was more tolerant than most other countries. So
absolutely. And the thing is all you have to do is stay in your own state. That's all. Your state gets to do whatever you want.
Kansas just proved that. I think delightful.
Oh, right.
The Kansas just proved that.
Yeah, the messaging.
They said, we're showing those justices now. No, you're kind of agreeing with them.
Yeah, a little bit. So there's another show. You watch this Only Murders in the Building with Steve Martin and Martin Short and Selena Gomez?
I watched a couple episodes. I had a hard time. Steve Martin doesn't amuse me anymore.
I still like him. I'm partial to him. I still remember how much he made me laugh with the arrow through his head. And one of his best bits ever was he was on the Tonight Show. And he told Johnny that he had to leave because, what these guests always would leave instead of slide down the couch. And then he gets up to leave, and then he goes behind the curtain, then comes right back out and said, I didn't really have to leave. I just wanted to make it look like, so can I please stay? He did a lot of great meta things. But anyway, he's in this show now. And, I want Obergefell overturned, but I am tolerating the gay love story subplot on Only Murders in the Building, which is I'm tolerating it. Isn't that wonderful of me? But the show's wearing on me for other reasons. I think most notably enunciated in this meta commentary of it's a show about these guys who are doing a podcast, and there are other podcasts in the show, and they're commenting on the first podcast, and they're basically commenting on the show, and they're talking about how lame it's getting. And they're right. So there's only so many murders in the building that you can take. So let us, since you don't watch that, let us switch to do we have video of this baseball player? He is sliding into third base, and his cell phone comes out. And as my friend Scott Bertram tweeted, this is he's the 2022 version of, this is Rodolfo Casto who does this. He's the 2022 version of Tim Raines, who I believe had cocaine pop out of his uniform when he slid once. But now I'm wondering if Siri told this guy to slide. I mean, he may have a GPS system telling him the shortest route between second and third base.
I'm wondering why he needs his phone with him when he's rounding the bases. I mean, does
because
he think
we
the game's
always need our phones. Look, I get directions home all the time from the drugstore, and you never know when there's going to be
going to take a selfie of himself on base.
Maybe. And
Mike Steele felt cute. Mike Steele, IDK.
So Jason Hayward can use his cell phone all he wants now because he no longer has a uniform to put it in. The Cubs got rid of him finally. This guy is one of the biggest busts in Chicago free agency history. I call it the $184 million pep talk. He gave a pep talk during the rain delay in Game 7 of the World Series, which supposedly catapulted the Cubs to rally and win the World Series. Recently, people have said, "Oh, that was way overblown." That his pep talk didn't mean anything. And I'm thinking, next thing you're going to tell me is that Babe Ruth didn't hit 2 homers for a sick kid, and that God didn't make little green apples and it don't rain in Indianapolis in the summertime. Come on. So, anyway, on that note, Tim, as always, watch Saul.
I will.
So we can talk about
I'll be all caught up by next week.
Okay. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
And that's the Weekly Wrap on radio and television. Follow Bruce at Bruce Wolf Shy on Twitter and Tim at timslagle.com. The Weekly Wrap with Bruce Wolf, a CP Pods production. Copyright 2022.